much checking, everybody. Welcome to a breaking news edition of Orangebloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. I'm joined today by nobody. It's just me. There's breaking news, and I'm the one that's around to do the show as Onwar spends a little time on vacation. I think Jason's still in the hill country. Isaiah Bond, Alabama wide receiver, has committed to Texas. It is a massive piece of news for Texas football on this Sunday. Where do we even begin? Let's just start with the specifics. Isaiah Bond, Alabama's best wide receiver this season. It might actually do me some good to pull up my instant analysis that I wrote about this. Led Alabama last year in receiving with 48, receiving yards with 668, and receiving touchdowns with 4. He's Alabama's best offensive weapon. And with the news that Nick Saban had retired, he immediately put himself into the portal. Steve Sarkisian immediately went to Atlanta, Georgia to meet with Isaiah Bond in person. Isaiah Bond takes the visit to Texas this weekend. It's wrapped up on a Sunday morning, and the Longhorns have, I think, their wide receiver one going into this season. When you looked at the wide receiver position for Texas, there's a lot of exciting parts. The one thing that I think everybody's been a little bit alarmed about is that they've got a lot of young guys who are inexperienced, unproven, and they've got a quarterback who's going into a season that a lot of people think he has a chance to be a Heisman front runner. The Longhorns, obviously, in year one in the SEC, not wanting to rely just on young guys growing up at a very, very rapid fashion. They added Matthew Golden a month ago, and yet the sense was, very nice piece. Matthew Golden is expected to be a starter. Matthew Golden is expected, I think, to be an impact newcomer, but maybe not wide receiver one on the level of an Xavier Worthy or an Adonai Mitchell. Isaiah Bond absolutely fits the bill. When you try to think about what Isaiah Bond does from a receiving standpoint, he plays inside, he plays out. I believe he was in the slot position last year at Alabama for 58% of the time, but it was on the outside for 41%. And then there's like 0.5 unaccounted for. I don't know if he's in the backfield or what, but those according to the PFF stats. He is a 10-400 meters guy, a 2105 200 meters guy. We're talking about a guy that has an opportunity to emerge into a high-level first-day, second-day NFL draft pick. And I think a guy that's got a chance to be an All-American this season for the University of Texas. So it's a big pickup. It's not the only piece of news of the day. You've got Duane Akina, confirmed by footballscoop.com, to be returning to Texas as an administrator. He'll be in an off-the-field capacity, but still coming back to the University of Texas to work with Johnny Nansen, who is the new co-DC and linebackers coach, who was obviously the Arizona defensive coordinator a year ago. Akina, in his first year as an analyst off the field, after having worked more than a decade or about a decade at Stanford, he's now at Texas. So there's a lot of stuff going on today. Get your super chat questions in if you want to discuss any of it. I'm looking right now. I know there's questions right away from Zoe here about the Texas defensive line coach. I think that thing is close. It wouldn't surprise. I've heard of a few names, right? We've heard Freddie Roach from Alabama. I think that's one to keep an eye on. I talked to an Alabama source last night who said that the expectation is that Roach probably won't be retained at Alabama, that Kalen DeBoer is coming in and they're expecting basically an entirely new coaching staff, save one or two spots. Could Freddie Roach be one of those couple of spots? Maybe. But again, in talking to a couple of different Alabama people last night that I trust, matter of fact, one who lives right down the street from Freddie Roach, the belief is that Roach probably won't be back at Alabama next year. What do we got going on here? Who the hell are you? Why are you on my screen?
What's up, my man? How are you?
I didn't expect to see your face.
Hey, the word went out. Can anybody jump on? I was anybody, so I can jump on. Am I good?
Welcome. We're talking about the Longhorns adding. We're talking about a lot of things. It's a busy Saturday. You've got Isaiah Bond is the primary reason we're doing the live show right this second, committing to Texas from Alabama. Your Aggies played Alabama this year. I mean, Texas got a chance to see Isaiah Bond in person this year. I think he made an impression, certainly on the Texas coaching staff. Everybody respects his talent. Chad, there are a lot of people that believe that Isaiah Bond might be the overall best player in the portal this year, and that if he's not, he's in the top 2 or 3. I know 24/7 did their rankings, and they had him ranked second, just ahead of Evan Stewart. Rivals hasn't updated its rankings. I haven't seen On3 or The Athletic, but 24/7 obviously having him ranked really, really high. Your thoughts on this piece of news and kind of the shakeup it means for both Texas and Alabama?
Man, I think it's huge. And we've been talking about, we always talk about dominoes that fall. This is the biggest coaching change. And in this case, it's a retirement that we've ever seen probably in our lives in college football, unless you want to maybe talk about when Bear Bryant stepped down. But with the portal going on like it is, it's not just about coaches. It's not just about, well, Kalen DeBoer and what does that mean at Washington and everything. It means portal immediately. And we've talked about this, Catch. It's one thing for Bond to lose the receivers coach, but because you could imagine Nick Saban going in there and talking to him about, okay, calm down. Here's what we're going to do. But you lose the receivers coach and Nick Saban. You just
and the OC
and is the OC gone?
Tommy Rees taking a job at Georgia.
Okay, there you go. And that right. Once Saban makes the decision, then you would assume that would even happen. Even before that, I would say Bond is a little freaked out. But having heard that, wow, Rees to Georgia. I'm processing that one as I'm hearing it. I hadn't heard that yet. That's a great move by Kirby Smart. At least in theory, right? At least the idea is interesting.
Kirby's been rating like a lot of the Alabama staff. He's just cherry picking guys that he wants to have come over.
So real quick on that. So is the idea that Bobo is staying and then Rees is going to go and just be quarterback's coach, or is he going to go?
I got my own problems.
Yeah,
I got my own things that I'm focused on. I know what I've read. I know that I haven't done the deep dive on how exactly all this works on the Georgia staff. But no, it's happening. Let's focus on non-Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. So back to Bond. I mean, it is a huge move. You know, the new improved days of the portal we know are you can get an impactful guy, but this is the type of guy that generally you're not going to get. It's going to have to be a crazy shakeup moment, and we've got it. And Steve Sarkisian obviously takes advantage of it. I like it a lot. Let him in receptions.
Let him in everything receiving-wise, yeah.
He's really, really good. And that Alabama, you mentioned my Aggies playing Alabama. I've said it all season, Catch. That's where they found themselves. That Alabama passing attack was kind of until they got to College Station. Something woke them up. That maroon got their attention, and Milroe, I thought, dialed in. I thought Jermaine Burton woke up that day, and then Bond got it going, and clearly he makes their biggest play in that Auburn game. So I think it's huge news. If you're a Texas fan, I'm thrilled that you're into this, and we've got questions on the chat about how does this affect the receiving room, but this is the good version of that, obviously, and not the bad version.
Yeah, I think let's start with you want to know how bad Steve Sarkisian wanted Isaiah Bond? As soon as Isaiah Bond's name entered the portal, Steve Sarkisian hopped on a plane and flew to Atlanta and met with Bond in person, gave him the sales pitch, gets him in town this weekend. Did you see the Lambo photo?
No. We have a new Lambo photo?
Yesterday, Isaiah Bond posted on his Snapchat. He was over at the Lambo dealership just looking around.
Dude, that's big time, by the way. I always say B Texas. There ain't no B in Texas like that. If you're in the transfer portal and you're like, hey, let's just go ahead and roll you by the Lambo dealership. Even if you don't get one, just take a look.
I think that was probably like players who maybe are in their own Lambos that could say, hey, the guy that owns a Lambo dealership is a former Longhorn, and like he
Yeah.
loves the football team. You should go by and see the dealership. You'll like it. And by all accounts, he did. It showed up on an Alabama website, which I think is funny because Alabama complaining of other schools being able to help their players get cars is funny to me. If you want to think about the history of college football, next thing I know, Duke basketball is going to be clutching their pearls because other players are getting the hookups while they check to see what's available from them on an NIL standpoint. Isaiah Bond did an interview with Pete Thamel, and over at theathletic.com, I advise if you want to check that out. I don't know if it's a free story or not. I know he linked it out on Twitter, otherwise known as X. One of the things that Bond said, among a couple of things, Chad, number one, he called it a pure business decision. And I mean, we've been talking about it. I think everybody gets it. You lose your position coach, your coordinator, your head coach. You're going into the last year before you're draft eligible. And one of the elephants in the room is that your quarterback is Jalen Milroe. And, it's not always easy being a receiver playing with Milroe, that he's not the quintessential throw it from the pocket, throw the ball in a way that accentuates the talents of a wide receiver more than it does the talents of the quarterback, which is what I think is. I look at, and I'm a huge Jalen Milroe guy, but I think if I was a receiver looking to prep myself for the NFL, I would want to play with a guy who is a little more wide receiver friendly and more of a pro style quarterback. The Longhorns, obviously, the secret weapon that the Longhorns have, one of them is Quinn Ewers in this discussion. Them being able to bring him back, he will be viewed as one of the top passing quarterbacks in college football next year. Maybe a guy that ends up being a high-level first-round draft pick, maybe preseason All-SEC. I think Isaiah Bond attracted to that, along with Steve Sarkisian's reputation for developing wide receivers and getting them into the NFL. Keep in mind that Bond was a guy that Sarkisian and the staff recruited for the 2021 recruiting class. He was going to take an official visit to Texas and then canceled it. But the Longhorns and Bond had a relationship. He knew the coaching staff. And for Sarkisian, people are asking, how does this impact the wide receiver room? He's your wide receiver one. He is going – and look, Texas really had a 1A and a 1B this year with Adonai Mitchell, who led the team in touchdowns, and Xavier Worthy, who led the team in yardage and receptions. Both of those guys on any given day were their wide receiver one. I think that Isaiah Bond from Jump Street right now, he's wide receiver one, and everything else can be built around him. As I mentioned, he played 60% of his snaps in the slot this year, but 40% of them on the outside. That's a lot different than what we're used to seeing with Xavier Worthy. Isaiah and Xavier, to me, are two names I constantly confuse for one another. I don't know why. I just do. But Xavier Worthy was purely an outside guy. Maybe this has a little bit of Devontae Smith written all over it, because if you think about how he was utilized at Alabama, he played inside a lot, but had the ability to also go outside. I think you're going to see Bond as wide receiver one. I think Matthew Golden and Jonte Cook are those are your three guys in a three receiver set. If you're going to ask me, who were the first two guys? It's interesting. I think that Golden is an outside guy. Cook is an outside guy. My guess is that Cook, and I don't know. As I think about it, I think Cook is going to be a nailed-on starter. I think you got to look at this offense as a three wide receiver offense, and Golden, Cook, and Bond will be the first three. It allows incoming five-star freshman Ryan Wingo, who will be here today. I think technically he arrived in Austin yesterday. It allows him to maybe be on the Jonte Cook 2023 plan in 2024, in the sense that he's going to play. I think he'll be the number 4 receiver, but we may be looking at a situation where If it takes him some time, he'll have it. If he accelerates and explodes and just forces his way onto the field, Chad, do you know what they call that?
Progress. Good
A
news.
good problem to have.
Yes, that's what you first world college football problems.
That's like the richest of rich man problems in college football, where it's like, oh hell, our plans changed a little bit.
Wait a minute. Beyonce called and wants me to go to the premiere of her movie, and Taylor called and wants me to go to the premiere of her movie. What do I do?
It's a tough life, but somebody has to do it. That's the situation that the Longhorns, I think, find themselves in now. I know that there have been a couple of people in the chat who've mentioned, thank you, by the way, to the guys at Specs for being the sponsor of our chat. What does this mean for DeAndre Moore? What does this mean for Ryan Niblett? Two very young guys who've basically done nothing in college football up until this point. It raises the bar for them in terms of what it will take to get on the field. I think Golden is an outside guy. Cook is an outside guy. Isaiah Bond is a guy that can go inside or out. But if you're talking about how do you get those three guys on the field right now together, I think Isaiah Bond's probably inside in the slot. What it means is that DeAndre Moore and Ryan Niblett are going to have, if they're going to play this season, they've either got to raise their games considerably or there's an injury or something like that. But, you know, the Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian and this staff, I think it made it pretty clear because they could have not bothered with the portal at all. They could have said, look, we got Ryan Wingo coming in. We've got Jonte Cook in year 2. We've got Moore and Niblett coming back. Like, you know, we like our group of receivers. This is about not taking chances. This is about you've got Quinn Ewers for one more season, and you don't want to waste, Chad, Quinn Ewers' final season before he goes off to the NFL with a wide receiving unit that is forced to kind of grow up on the fly. It's a hell of a thing to ask a receiving corps when they've got to go to Ann Arbor in week 2, when Georgia and Oklahoma and so many difficult SEC games await this year on the schedule. What do? You go out and you take arguably the best wide receiver remaining in the SEC. You add him to your roster. You go out and you get Matthew Golden from Houston. You let Jonte Cook elevate from wide receiver 4 up into that starting lineup. I think they feel fantastic about where they are at the wide receiver position right now. But if the question is, what do the young guys do? Young guys got to get better. It ain't show friends, it's show business. And if you're Steve Sarkisian and you've got an opportunity to go out and get one of the top handful of returning wide receivers in the entire country, an absolute game changer, I mean, there's just nothing to think about. And I think the urgency for which he showed in going after Isaiah Bond speaks to A, what he thinks of his talent level, and B, what it speaks to, I think, how badly he thought he was needed in this offense.
Special show today because Isaiah Bond makes it official that he is transferring to Texas. Like, subscribe, and yes, get notifications so you find out when shows like this happen. Up over 340 folks in that Specs chat. Come on in. No NFL game because it's crazy in Buffalo today. Cowboys go at 3:30. So you're not missing NFL action right now. Jump on in. We're talking lots of Texas football stuff. And Catch, my bad because I apparently interrupted something at the beginning. Do you need to circle back around on a D-line coach discussion? Because I know Texas fans are interested in that element of it as well. Did you get to finish that thought?
I've explored every name that has been discussed, rumored, bandied about. I haven't been able to nail down anything. The one guy that I talked about, Freddie Roach at Alabama, I think to me, he is the most obvious guy to keep an eye on. Ed Orgeron has a relationship with Steve Sarkisian from back in the day. I think they kicked the tires on him, but I will say this. If it was going to be Orgeron, I just have an impossible belief that could completely stay under wraps, that he's such a big personality and so many national reporters know him. I mean, he's Ed O, for God's sakes.
So you don't think Ed O could be quiet? You don't think Ed O could chill out on social media?
I think he could be, But I think he's got agents. Their agents know reporters. I just think a little bit more smoke would be on him out there in the universe. You know, Duane Akina, one of the pieces of breaking news that we're talking about today, Duane Akina moving from an analyst at Arizona to an analyst position at Texas. That's been rumored for like 2 weeks. Literally the moment that Johnny Nansen took the co-DC linebacker job, that was something that was already being discussed. It's hard to keep stuff quiet in 2024. That's my thought on Ed Orgeron, that it's so quiet. Surely if he was going to be a frontline candidate for that job, that wouldn't stay quiet. But I've checked around. I haven't heard anything on that. You know, one name that popped up yesterday, and I think now I've been told we can knock off the list, is Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen. He had come up as a name yesterday that was being discussed by a number of influential Longhorn people, a name that they were hearing. I wonder if that's a couple of things, Chad. He's a defensive coordinator, defensive line coach in Atlanta. And maybe we shouldn't spend this much time talking about him because I can say it sounds like he's not a candidate. But Jacksonville had requested to talk to him. Atlanta said no. The thing is, Atlanta's trying to hire a head coach, and they don't even know if they're going to keep Nielsen for next season, but they have him under contract. So for now, they can just block anything. The one move that he could make, because he can't make a lateral move in the NFL without a team's permission, is he can go to college football and do anything he wants to and not need permission. I think because Sarkisian was in Atlanta just a couple of days ago, that there might have been some suspicion. It crossed my mind. Well, he's there. He can talk with Isaiah Bond. Maybe on the way out of town, he talks to Ryan Nielsen and sees, hey, would you have any interest at all? 2 years ago, Nielsen would turn down the LSU defensive coordinator position under Brian Kelly. Just to give you an idea, he'd been a college coach about a decade ago at NC State, whatever. Sounds like he's not a guy. He's not the guy. Who is the guy? Still trying to work on that. The defensive line coach at Texas Tech has been whispered about. Could it be somebody from the NFL? Very possibly. Because if Sarkisian has his guy, and he's from the college ranks, I think they could all look. Alabama assistant coaches are announcing new positions all over the place. So if it was going to be Freddie Roach, I think they could have already done that, unless Roach really is waiting to see what's up at Alabama. I have a sneaking suspicion it could be somebody from the NFL. We know that when the wide receiver job opened up a year ago, he went to Jacksonville to get Chris Jackson. And I think that's worked out well for him. I mean, the receiving position this year at Texas did very well under Chris Jackson, and recruiting isn't suffering at all when you look at the addition of Ryan Wingo, getting Matthew Golden, and now Isaiah Bond in the portal. I think Steve Sarkisian helps a lot with that. But we've seen that Sarkisian hasn't had to make a lot of changes. If we think about the changes he's made so far, he goes out, well, if you think about the wide receiver coach, he starts out with Andre Coleman. That doesn't work. He goes out and gets Brennan Marion. When that didn't work, he goes out and gets Chris Jackson. When they needed to make a move at the running backs coach, he brings in Tashard Choice. He's got very fine taste. He does not go after scrubs when looking to field position coaches. When he lost Jeff Choate, he goes out and gets the Arizona defensive coordinator and turns him into a co-DC, but really a position coach as much as anything else. So look, man, I don't really have any doubts about what Sarkisian will do. I feel pretty confident he's going to hire somebody who's really, really good. They've got freshmen who are really on the fence. Alex January from Duncanville, a player that you saw earlier this year when going home to watch your Waxahachie. They're the Indians, right?
They are the Indians, yep.
You watched them play Duncanville earlier this year. You had a chance to see January play. He's moving to Austin today, so he's good.
Okay.
But
Nice.
there's talk that DeAndre Robinson, the defensive tackle from Orlando, Florida, who probably picked Texas more than anything else because of his relationship with Bo Davis, there's talk behind the scenes that he may ask out of his letter of intent. Jason spoke with somebody connected to Melvin Hills earlier today. There's at least some consideration for that. So Texas does need to bring in a defensive tackle coach soon, defensive line coach, to kind of stop a little bit of bleeding. I mean, this hurt them in their pursuit of Jamari Caldwell. So they may have lost Caldwell to Oregon because of Bo Davis going to LSU. And now you see the defensive tackle class for Texas shaky to just at least a slight degree. The thing about Melvin Hills that makes him different from DeAndre Robinson is that Hills is a midterm. He's going to show up in the summer. So he's got a lot of time in theory to figure out what he wants to do. Robinson's supposed to be moving to Texas today. So look, if he shows up today, that's probably a good sign. If he's one of like 19, 20 freshmen that are scheduled to show up and doesn't, I mean, Texas better get on the, I think working fast to try to bring him, solidify him, bring him back into the fold. There are some concerns, though, that he could peel off, ask out of his letter of intent before this thing is all said and done.
Up over 400 folks in the Specs chat. We appreciate you, and we certainly appreciate those super chats. They go right to the top of the list. Colin, we appreciate those $5. Is there any DTs in the portal that we're still looking at, or some that may enter from Bama, Washington, or Michigan? And what about the D-line coach? Obviously, we were just talking about the coaching part of it. And Ketch, you mentioned Caldwell. For those that didn't see it officially, Jamari Caldwell did commit to Oregon, as Ketch mentioned. So Dan Lanning taking advantage in a way I wasn't thinking about, that maybe the D tackle from Houston would consider going out there. So once that
was viewed as the leader for Caldwell before the Bo Davis thing happened.
Right. Okay.
And then the Bo Davis thing happens, and you've got Caldwell, who's got to make a decision. He wants to get into school.
Right.
I mean, it's just one of those things. It's a byproduct of look at Alabama. I mean, Alabama's dealing with a lot of this stuff right now when you have changes in your coaching staff in 2024 and kids are allowed to transfer, special rules are put into place. Look, here's what I would say to answer Colin's question specifically. Are there any defensive tackles who are in the portal right now from Bama, Washington, or Michigan? No. Michigan hasn't lost its coach yet. Bama and Washington going through that now, you might. I think there's two pieces of this. Texas is running out of defensive tackle pieces who are in the portal right this second. There's really not any right this second. If anybody from Bama and I think Michigan, and I don't know Michigan's roster well enough to know which guys would even be coming back. How big would a gym? I don't know what's going on at Michigan. But if something happens at Alabama, and Alabama had another linebacker enter the portal today, a kid's name who I can't even remember. He's not a starter, but he was a contributor. There will be more players that come into the portal. Those guys will become options. I think the thing to look for, because I know of one name, and I don't know how many of these guys exist out there in general, but I do get the sense that there are names of guys who are at other schools right now who missed the portal window. Believe it or not, Chad, the window that we thought would never close has closed on some guys.
Okay. It does have a closing mechanism.
But I do know of a guy from a Power 5 school who is a starting defensive tackle who had a family member reach out to me to say this could happen in the spring. And I can't give any more hints.
Right.
I don't even want to go into the how good is he compared to Jamari Caldwell. Oh, he was first team all Pac-12. But, don't try to figure out who it is. I don't want to give out any hints that's going to betray the confidence of the person who reached out to me. But I do think Texas, one way or the other, is going to address the defensive tackle issue. They will bring in guys. What will the quality of those players be, I think, remains to be seen. But as it relates to defensive tackle, the Longhorns, they have limited options right now. There's not a lot in the portal unless some of the players from the schools that you just listed, Colin, join. So far, that hasn't happened. I would say this. If a bona fide big-time D tackle from either of those three schools enters the portal, Steve Sarkisian will be on a plane flying to see that kid as soon as he can. It just doesn't exist right now. And so, yes, when we talk about the defensive tackle position going into next season right now, it is one of the real question marks about this team. I would say it probably will be that going into the season, but I'm fairly confident that there will be a name or two that arrives and aids the defensive tackle position. But we're months away from seeing that play out, and everybody's probably just going to have to be patient a little bit and realize, they'll be able to go get somebody like they were able to go out and get Trill Carter a year ago. And will these guys be impact players? That's subjective. on a defense right now that's looking for players, impact is relative. Will they be guys that'll be Tavondre Sweat or Byron Murphy? Probably not. Like, what's available in the portal aren't those two guys. There's not even a Bear Alexander this year at the defensive tackle position in the portal, with all due respect to Jamari Caldwell. So sit tight. Help will be on the way, but it might be like 4+ months before we get there to the spring window opens up May 1st to May 15th. Unless something happens at one of those three schools, the defensive tackle recruiting through the portal is going to probably be restricted to what happens in May. Now, Chad, one thing to keep in mind, because I had reported this over at Orangebloods today. Jabbar Muhammad, the DB out of Washington that did a great job. There it is right there. I had a source reach out to me today and not vice versa. Believe me, I hound my sources a lot. I try to give them Sunday mornings off. I don't want to be that guy who is calling and waking somebody up on Sunday morning, either when that's their only day to sleep in or they're going to church or whatever. Had a source reach out to me today indicating that the recruitment of Jabbar Muhammad may be a little more difficult to navigate than they initially anticipated, because he's one of these guys. I've talked about this on our shows a lot. If you're a young guy, Isaiah Bond's a perfect example. He's only been at Alabama for 2 years. When you can only transfer in 60 hours, unless it's a grad student, it gets tricky. And from what I know about Jabbar Muhammad, he's a guy that's like a fourth-year player. He's been at Oklahoma State. He transfers to Washington. I don't know the specific issue, but I get the sense that there is an issue in terms of core credits, whatever it is. He's an older guy with a ton of hours, and which ones from Oklahoma State and Washington can transfer over. And, one of the things that had been talked about with Andrew Makuba at one point, and they were able to figure that out, was that if you strip a guy of all of his hours, right? So let's say a guy's got 90 and he's on his way to his senior season, and you only allow 60, then when you show up in the fall, because you've only allowed for 60 hours to transfer in. He's suddenly no longer on pace to graduate and then is ineligible. So I can't tell you what the thing is with Jabbar Muhammad. And look, maybe they'll be able to get over it. The sense I got this morning was this is not working out for us, and that Jabbar Muhammad may want to come to Texas. He's got reasons to come to Texas, but for things that have nothing to do with NIL or position coaches or anything like that, it may be just more advantageous for him on the academic side to go to Oregon than it is for Texas. And it's something that you got to keep in mind with every single kid that comes through in the portal. It's going to be one of the things I write about in my 10 thoughts from the weekend later today. If you're getting a young guy like Bond, who may not even have 60 hours built up, that guy's fairly easy to transfer in. It's exactly what I was told today, first of all, that Bond is a great student. So they had no issues, but of the types of problematic things I'm talking about, he doesn't qualify because he's just in his second year at Alabama. So they're probably able to move over his entire allotment of coursework. If you're an older player, if you're a junior or a senior and you haven't graduated, it gets more difficult to get into Texas. A source told me this morning, for the first time, I kind of understand how Stanford feels, is what a source told me, because the way this thing works is, right, they find out that a guy's in the portal, then they do a deep dive, right? Who is this kid? What's his reputation like? Is he a guy that we should go after? Once you've done that, it's like, well, now we got to recruit him, right? So now you got to go after him and like talk him into coming your way and doing all these things. And once they've learned he's in the portal and they've done the deep dive and all of their vetting in terms of, is he a guy that we should even take? And then after they recruit the guy, because Texas was in home with Jabbar Muhammad last night. Damn. After they've done all of that, and I know this sounds ass backwards, but when you think about it, it makes sense. You have to find out first that he's in the portal. Yeah. Then you have to find out, is this guy a culture fit? Does he, is this a guy we want at Texas?
Right. Yeah. And for those who don't remember, Jabbar, it's DeSoto, is that correct?
Yes.
Right, DeSoto guy.
And first cousins with Malik Muhammad. Gotcha. Also first cousins with Billy Walton, a Texas freshman. And then also first cousins with one of the best players on the Texas women's basketball team. Damn. There's a lot of reasons for him to want to come to Texas. I talked to a Washington source yesterday who said they talked to somebody close to Muhammad and that they thought Muhammad wanted to come home and be closer to his family. The thing is, after Texas has done all of the stuff that they've got to do, then they take the academic stuff and they send it over to the academic people. And that's where shit can go bad.
Right.
And I've heard that it's gone bad on a few occasions, that I wasn't given any names because I think my source trying to protect them and himself and everybody else. But I was told that there's a handful of guys that I think Texas would have already taken in this transfer class that they weren't able to take for these reasons. Probably some names that never got quite to the visit part of all of this because they were able to do, but maybe, who knows? Maybe a guy who's a player that somewhat fits that profile, Juice Wells, that you start thinking about guys they'd been rumored with. You think about their profiles. Think about Juice Wells. He's a guy that I think is going to be a senior next year. He's a guy that probably has accumulated. Now, I had always heard that Juice Wells, and I'm just throwing his name out there as an example. I don't know if he's one of these guys or not. But if you're wondering who might they be, they're going to be older players who are non-grad students. So think about the names that have been bandied about as guys that the Longhorns might have an interest in. This popped up with Jamari Caldwell back in December. When he first hit the portal, there was some thought that there was just no way that he'd be able to transfer into Texas. I think they might have been able to find ways around that with a month to brainstorm But not so much right now with Jabbar Muhammad. That doesn't mean that I'm not telling you that Jabbar Muhammad is definitely going to Oregon. I'm not. Like, there's a lot of, if Texas can figure it out, then I think Texas has a very good chance. But I'm told it's complicated. And I think, and all of that will transfer to any defensive tackle that Texas wants to get in the portal. So, Chad, if there is a guy from Michigan, but let's say he's a fourth-year junior.
Right. Not quite done.
Not quite done. And should he want to make the move, it just gets complicated. Things are more complicated at Texas with regards to taking in transfers than they are at other schools. It's just a problem that is going to exist forever. Like, I think everybody in the football department would be like, we got to do something, like somebody step in and make this easier. And the universe, it's just not their call. It's all from the academic side of things. And
so it's not all the way to say some of those challenges we've talked about over the years with, say, Notre Dame, but
correct.
But it's between that and this and sort of the normal, I don't know about average school is not the way to say it, but it's somewhere in the middle of that. I think that's an interesting.
Texas won't allow. Let's say you're a defensive tackle that's got 100 hours of credit at Michigan,
right?
Not even though Michigan is a amazingly good school, they're not going to let anybody transfer over 100 hours so that they can go to school for 20 hours at Texas and get a diploma that reads the University of Texas.
Right. I got you. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can come from Harvard, you can come from Austin Community College.
Yeah.
There are ways to transfer in, but the older you are, the more complicated it gets. And
as long as, if you haven't graduated, then the complication starts.
If you're a grad student, come on down. You're easy. You're easy. And I think with Bond, he's a perfect example of a profile of a guy that he just, in his second year at Alabama, there's just not enough course credit there for him to have to worry about the things that older guys only by a year or two have to worry about. It's kind of as simple as that. I don't have any good answers for anybody who's like, just make some, wink, nod, do whatever you got to do to get the guy in for football. Like, there's no sense that that's who the University of Texas on the academic side is ever going to be. They're never going to just let a football player or any athlete or any student for that matter cheat the process that essentially has been the process forever. This is who the University of Texas is. And it's a hard thing. And look, I think the fan response on this, because I talked about this over on Orangebloods today, there are some people who are like, just get the kid in, damn it. All I care about is the football team. And then there are other people who are like, look, man, I graduated from Texas. And if Texas wants to have a standard and wants to have academic principles, like, I can't be mad at that. So everybody's opinions about the process fall somewhere in between those two things, I think. It really doesn't matter what any of us think. This is the system that's in place. And on occasion, with regards to the transfer portal, because this doesn't really impact incoming freshmen. This is just about transfers. Some are always going to be more difficult than others. And I think, based on what I was told this morning, that a certain defensive back from Washington could be in this situation right now.
We have a super chat catch as we were talking about Muhammad. They wanted a quick side-by-side here. Colin wants to know who's better, Muhammad or Brooks. Obviously, that's a Terrence Brooks comp. Your opinion, where do you stack Muhammad up against a guy like Brooks?
I don't know that it matters where I stack them up. I think Texas's appetite to go get Jabbar Muhammad speaks to how the answer to this question, I believe. Because we know that Malik Muhammad's going to be a starter at one spot. I think there's urgency to get competition for Terrence Brooks at that other corner spot. look, at this point, Terrence Brooks has not been an all Big 12 type of player, whereas Jabbar Muhammad has been all Big 12 and then all Pac 12 in consecutive seasons. He's really good. I think Jabbar Muhammad, if he went to the NFL this year in the draft, I think would be a top 100 type of draft pick. So he'd be a borderline day 2 guy. I think he's hoping to elevate his draft stock a little bit higher. But, there are some people that would advise him to just go to the NFL, that you're ready. You're ready, and the league will like you, and this is where you're going to be drafted. But he's made the decision at this point to transfer, although he could always pull the reverse Cameron Ward. Did you see that yesterday, Chad?
No. Hadn't thought of that name in a couple weeks. What happened?
He's decided he's playing at Miami.
Wait, okay.
He announced that he was going to go into the NFL draft.
Okay, and Cam Ward was at Washington State.
Correct.
Okay.
And yesterday he announced his commitment to Miami. So,
okay.
Maybe Texas can get, or maybe not Texas, but maybe Jabbar Muhammad eventually pulls the reverse. He always has that option, and I think he'd be just fine. But yeah, I would, and I think the Texas coaches would rank, and I think most people in college football, Colin, would rank Jabbar Muhammad over Terrence Brooks at this point.
Colin, thank you so much for that. We also want to let me give a shout out to Powada because they threw this in a couple different times. Thank you for your persistence. Remember, super chats, we'll go right to the front, just saying. Is there any interest in Darius Clemens, the 4-star wide receiver out of Michigan who entered the portal, or are the Longhorns satisfied in their receivers now? That may be a good way to look at it. Catches, you were stacking it up earlier. Feels like a hell of a wide receiver room with this Isaiah Bond news. Do you feel like this kind of calms that room down and it's sort of, okay, this is it?
It does. My dog, by the way, big fan of this particular question. I think they're done at the wide receiver position. Hold on just a sec while I shout at my dog.
Not a problem. The dog's been breaking down film. The dog has seen Darius Clemens, but the dog also really likes Isaiah Bond from what I hear.
I think the Longhorns are probably set at wide receiver. I think the goal was to take 2 coming out of this season. I think they love a lot of the young talent they have in the background. Keep in mind, they went out and got Aaron Butler right after signing day from California. So on the second team wide receiver unit, you're going to have Ryan Wingo, you're going to have Aaron Butler, you're going to have DeAndre Moore, and you're going to have Ryan Niblett. I think they feel like those guys all have chances to eventually be starters and impact players. Obviously, right? I mean, one of these guys is a 5-star player. I don't think they're going to do anything more, I should say, because they have taken a couple of guys that I think block the progression of some of these guys this season. But they're not going to do anything else, I think, to block that position. They're good with their young guys. What they've desperately wanted was to add experience, a legit wide receiver 1 option, and proven productivity. They've got that from Golden and now Isaiah Bond. I think they feel like Jonte Cook's a star in the making. So I think they're probably done at the wide receiver position. I think moving forward, they'd like to sign a tight end if they can. I think they'd like to get 2 defensive linemen. I think you'd like to see them maybe. And look, they brought in Kendrick Blackshire for a visit this weekend. So clearly a potential linebacker is one of those. And they're looking at Jabbar Muhammad right now. So that would be 6 more. I think they will focus on those types of players and positions. And I think they're done at wide receiver.
So just a quick minute. Somebody threw Silas Bolden's name in. So the Silas Bolden thing you think is done for Texas?
The good news is Silas is pretty good about getting back to me pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Silas has visits scheduled everywhere. Like, I think his last visit, I have to go back and look at what I reported. Hold on.
He's covering that Pac-12 pretty good. The old Pac-12. He's covering your old Pac-12 pretty good.
Let me look at it because Silas sent me the thing. So he's visiting Arizona next weekend, or this week, actually. He's got a visit to Washington on the 20th, although that could be completely up in the air given that this all happened before Kalen DeBoer took the Alabama job. But then he's probably going to USC on January 27th. I wouldn't anticipate that Texas. What I was told was that Silas Bolden was likely a depth piece. So not a guy that they thought would come in and absolutely start. So as a depth piece, now that you've added a starting piece, which, oh, by the way, improves your depth, you know what? I like Silas Bolden. The guy returns my messages. So like,
for a very selfish reason.
There's a part of me that's like, bring this kid in, because if he were to commit to Texas, I think he'd tell me. But I think he's look, this is a guy that was Oregon State's top dog a year ago. He's not trying to transfer someplace and be the fifth guy. Otherwise, he'd just go back to Oregon State and stay a top guy. So I think Bolden is still on campus, but I think the Isaiah Bond news probably makes the decision for him. And I'm sure the coaches will tell him, look, you can come here. We'll absolutely, maybe they'll say we'd take you, but you need to know that it'll be really tough sledding now to get on the field. And we'll see.
Catch, just like any teacher, I know you love it when the students pay attention. Colin with a $5 super chat. What is your over-under on Muhammad getting the Makuba treatment and this getting done? You stated before that Makuba had this issue, but it got done. Well thought out, Colin. Catch, what do you think?
I mean, look, it's possible. I'm not telling you today that they're not going to get Jabbar Muhammad. I'm just telling you that there are some complexities to his recruitment. I think the problem is they only have I don't know how to handicap that. I know this. I had somebody reach out to me to kind of vent about this, and this wasn't me digging around. So could it happen? Yes. Could it happen in the next 48 hours? I don't know. If it was that easy, I don't know that the person that reached out to me today would have reached out to me today. He could have just not said anything and waited the next 48 hours or so. How much time is Muhammad giving all of this to, I think someone mentioned that Bobby Burton had mentioned on his YouTube show that Muhammad was coming in to visit Texas next weekend. First of all, I think there's a good chance he's going to visit Oregon before that. If he survives the Oregon visit and doesn't commit, which is always the advantage that Texas had with Isaiah Bond this weekend.
Yeah.
In the transfer world, getting that first visit is sometimes everything. If he visits Texas next weekend, Texas will have had 5 more days to maybe figure that subplot out. I don't know. Colin, it's not out of the realm of possibilities for the reason that you listed.
Yeah.
Smart people can sometimes figure out a pathway. Can they do it now? The other thing I'd point out about Makuba and potentially Muhammad is that whatever their issues are, they won't exactly be the same. For instance, whatever Makuba has or did at Clemson, it was one school. Muhammad is a guy that started at Oklahoma State, which I've been told that the university, like you and I could write out a diploma, like write out Ketchum and Chad University diploma.
Mm-hmm.
It might have more value to the University of Texas than whatever a kid does at Oklahoma State.
Wow. Okay. Damn.
I know it's insulting,
Golly.
but Washington, on the other hand, Washington's a great school. If he were of a profile like Makuba and it was just at one school, I think it would be easier. I think, again, one of the issues that we're looking at here, and I certainly don't have the answers for like what transfers, how the hell would I know that with regards to whatever Muhammad's done in his scholastic career at the collegiate level, I don't know what classes have been taken where. It's tough. Could it happen? Yeah. Yes. I have not heard that it's over with Jabbar Muhammad. I've only heard that there are some complexities that have people nervous.
Yeah. All I know is from what I've heard these last few days and weeks, Catch, if you're looking for a pickup football or basketball game, don't go picking around that Muhammad family reunion. You're going to get your ass kicked. I'm just saying. You're going to get.
Can you imagine them at the cookout? You're like, they got a basketball game going. Damn. Somebody walks up and it's like, yo, can we play?
You can.
You can. Come on. But you should know that like everybody in the family plays collegiate something somewhere.
Yeah. Ready. All right, Catch. So this far in, and thanks to over 530 folks who've jumped into that Specs chat, anything else we need to be covering here in the impromptu show? This was created because of Isaiah Bond, in case people are just jumping in. Isaiah Bond committing to Texas, transferring officially now to Texas. Anything else that needs to be hit here in this show?
Keep an eye on Kendrick Blackshire. I mean, I think that's Blackshire and Jabbar Muhammad are the two guys right now to absolutely keep an eye on. You could throw Silas Bolden in there, but again, I think his spot got taken. And if they took, I will say this, and it doesn't make sense to me. If they took Bolden, it would be quite a damning message implication of the young guys they have. Because Bolden, whatever he is, he's a proven Pac-12 frontline producer. So he shows up, he's ahead of guys that haven't practiced or played at all. You know, it'd make me think like, again, it's hard for me to imagine why would you have even, and Aaron Butler has to be thought of as kind of the third transfer in this class. I know he's a high school football recruit, but they went out and got him in the last hour. He actually signed after signing day, hadn't even taken a visit. So he's the third. Maybe don't think of him as a transfer, but he's the third guy that they've brought in to address their numbers. So if you bring in Bolden, he's a fourth. So I think Jabbar Muhammad, what happens? What officially? When does he visit Oregon? Can Texas drag this thing out? Get him on campus next weekend. If that happens, I'll start feeling a lot better, I think, about Texas's chances. And I think the people that I talk to will probably feel the same way. Blackshire is on campus now, so let's wait and see what happens there. Although I do wonder, he's not a grad student, and he's a guy that's been at Alabama for a hot minute. I wonder how difficult his situation is. And then keep an eye on the Alabama-Washington rosters. And then Michigan. Should Michigan leave? And then, quite frankly, all of the continued trickle down, right? Because Michigan, if they had to hire a coach, who do they go get? If it's somebody from the college ranks, suddenly that guy's roster is open for 30 days. And until the coaching carousel completely stops,
right?
Just know that, like, you know, whenever you play poker and you've got like a one card out, for now, that's kind of Texas in the portal, that they always have an out as long as guys are getting these 30-day windows to potentially look around. Outside of that, it's going to have to be May.
Yeah, and think about this, Catch. And somebody was asking earlier about Alabama, Washington, and Michigan, and I'm guessing that could have been playoff related. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. They're just thinking of three big-time teams. But think about it. If all the rumors about Harbaugh were true, you could end up with a 30-day window for all three.
Yeah, Harbaugh is apparently interviewing with the Chargers today.
So you're talking 3 of the 4. We all know if you're a Texas fan, you're the other one of the 4, and you just locked your guy up, and you know he's going to be there.
Oh, by the way, that happened, Chad.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Steve Sarkisian, even though the actual numbers may not be out there, he's locked in for Texas. So is Quinn Ewers, but the other 3 playoff teams could end up losing their head coaches and then have a 30-day window open up where everybody gets to go in and do a little shopping. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that. It's going to be wild times. Catch, we have multiple people on the chat asking about the new schedule coming up with Orangebloods Live starting tomorrow. And I think that'll be obviously a good thing. We can look at that. See, I just speak it into existence. There it is. For those of you who asked, and James threw it in earlier, you should restate the new show lineup. James, appreciate you asking. We appreciate the interest. Tomorrow, as we jump right into it, it's going to be a busy football Monday is what we're trying to put together for you with this new schedule. More shows, a little more streamlined, but tons of football. Old-fashioned at 9 a.m., House Divided at 12, Football with Friends with Alex cranking up at 2 o'clock, and the new recruiting show at 4. As you see there, it's going to be Catch, myself, and whoever else needs to jump in. 4 o'clock, Mondays and Wednesdays, everything you need to know in recruiting, portal, coaching changes, and how it all ties together. And then if you're an Orangebloods freak and you've been missing the modcast, check out Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 o'clock. Oh, yeah. You're going to want to be locked into Orangebloods Live at 4 o'clock every damn day from Monday through Thursday, because you're going to get all that you want throughout that time period, not to mention all the other good stuff. But the modcast is back, and the recruiting show cranks up tomorrow, and it's going to be a big-time week. So there's a look at the schedule.
Whatever will we have to talk about, Chad?
I don't know. I don't know that we will have anything to talk about at all. My goodness.
Real quick, on the schedule.
Yeah.
I'll probably have – so, Blake, let's change the Monday 9 a.m. because technically it's going to be the Monday Overreaction show on Mondays at 9. Now, the reason why we've got the old-fashioned logo up there is because during the football season, we did the Monday Overreaction show inside of the old-fashioned show. And – I guess even when Blake and I were talking about it last week, I guess I still thought of it as the old-fashioned show, but just an altered version of it. Well, no, it's just going to be the Monday Overreaction show. So in a way, it's old-fashioned 5 days a week. But on Mondays, it will be me and Anwar, and then the other 4 days of the week, the prototypical standard old-fashioned show.
Yeah, you just put a strip right across it. It just says Monday Overreaction on the old-fashioned show. It's going to be a good time. So, yeah, there's your starter for the week, 9 a.m. Tomorrow. And, yes, tomorrow is a holiday. We hope everybody gets to enjoy that holiday with friends and family. Maybe while you're just chilling out at the house, check out Orangebloods Live. Give that new schedule a sample tomorrow. Today was a good sample for you. Catch, myself going about an hour and talking Isaiah Bond and some other stuff. So a lot out there when it comes to Texas football. Anything else we need to hit here, Catch?
Hit that like button, folks. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We do tons of content. If you're new, trust me, I think we'll entertain you if you give us a chance. And oh, by the way, get notifications because, as Chad mentioned, you never know when news is going to break. And we'll just show up on a Sunday morning, late morning, and do a 1 hour show because events dictate it. So, other than that, I'm done, Chad.
There you go. Well, you
said
hello.
Watch some Cowboys.
We got to go watch the Cowboys. I was going to say, the Dallas Cowboys are coming up at 3:30. By the way, as long as we're sitting here, congratulations to the Texans who got a win. Congratulations to the Chiefs who got a win. The Dolphins and the Browns are facing the corner because they lost. So congrats to those teams. They moved the Buffalo game till tomorrow. Man, C.J. Stroud was a badass and maybe Rookie of the Year and MVP at the same time. I don't know. Probably a decent argument for it. A lot of good NFL coming. So Cowboys at 3:30. Yeah, Catch. I jumped in and interrupted after you had said hello. So if you want to say goodbye, you go right ahead.
Goodbye.